if you were talking to a group of young student journalists today, would you encourage them to get into business and finance reporting, given all the obstacles we see out there?
Yes, Greg, I would actually encourage young students studying journalism to pursue that profession if they're extremely smart, they have a thick skin, and they really want to be a journalist. And if that's true, I think it's a wonderful profession. However, the way the world is now, you really have to be really, really smart. And because the world is so hostile towards journalists, you really have to have a thick skin. But as a beat, I think that business, economics, finance is one of the, if not the most important beat. And I think you're not going to become rich as a journalist, but if it's a profession that I feel really is, it's God's work. We're shedding light in a dark place, and in this post-truth world, especially, seeking the truth is got to be the most important profession, I would say, going. And it can be a very rewarding, personally rewarding career. So yes, Greg, I would encourage students to pursue it.
It's interesting because, when I started out my journalistic career, to date myself, in the 1980s, politics, everybody wanted to be a political reporter. And but really what's happened in the past few decades is that business and finance and the economic reporting have become at the center, of wealth, power, and influence. And so you really are much more at the center if you're a business and finance reporter today.
Absolutely. And business, finance, economics affects everybody. Everyone has an interest.
Now, you alluded to this, by the way, as media organizations increasingly have been criticized for publishing fake news or extremely biased news on the Democratic and the Republican side. What role do you think that organizations like the New York Financial Writers can play really in this hostile media climate?
Well, I think organizations like the Financial Writers are extremely important, especially in today's hostile climate, because basically we need to stick together. We have to support one another in fellowship, continued education. And I think we have an important role to play in establishing a standard of credibility. I mean, why not? I mean, we have certified public accountants, you have certified financial planners. Why not have a CFW, a certified financial writer? I think, we could, as an organization, establish something like that, some sort of a standard that we can.
You can even rank, even though it might not be fully accredited across the industry. You could have one group that at least would rate the quality of journalists, right, by their factual accuracy.
Right. And in the meantime, we play a role in continuing education. I mean, that we have to stay on top of the world, Greg.
How about this? You're a longtime member of the New York Financial Writers Association. By the way, I note that you served as president in the mid-1990s. What has been being part of the New York Financial Writers? What's it given to you over the years, both personally and professionally?
Well, being a part of the Financial Writers as a member, as you said, serving on the board and as an officer, helped me immensely in my career, especially not only as a journalist when I was at Business Week and U.S. News and World Report, but it helped me especially when I became director of the Night Badget program. I learned leadership skills by just participating in the organization. I gained leadership skills. I learned how to do some public speaking, how to teach, and fundraising. Fundraising was a big part of what the Financial Writers does ongoing, and it was certainly a big part of my career too there. But I think even more important than how my career was I was personally benefited by being introduced to so many wonderful people who have been mentors for me. They've become lifelong friends. Many of them I'm still in constant contact with, even though I live in Las Vegas most of the time. I now have friends on Facebook who I've known for most of my life, and just to name a few. I mean, the people that come to mind: Britt Tunick and Jane Riley, Joyce Bartonis, who are the dedicated people who have kept this organization going for decades. We're still friends on Facebook. I've got my, Follies friends have now become my Facebook friends. Peggy Price, Amy Friedman, Susan Lisovich, Lisa Yap, Judy Glass. You remember these people, Bob Kozma, Richard Chang, and of course, our colleagues, Greg at Business Week, are the very talented Ray Hoffman and Peter Coy.
Right.
You
That's
know,
right.
we're still in contact, and I also have to give a special shout out to Lenny Sloan, who all women in the organization need to thank, because it was under his tenure as president that women were actually allowed to join the organization. And
That was in the
I have
mid-70s, wasn't it? That I think the Claudia Deutsch pointed that out. Was it the mid-70s that you had your first female to enter, or was it earlier?
No, I think it was in the 70s, maybe early 70s. But I have to say that the single most important thing that I have gotten out of the financial writers is my friendship with Mike Candell. Mike Candell has guided me in my career. He's been an incredible personal friend. And again, I say that the single most important thing, the single best thing that happened to me as a member of the financial writers is Myron Candell.
Mike Candell was the founder of CNN Business News, an illustrious career, right? In a number of organizations. Talk about an illustrious career. In 2006, you were given the Financial Writers Association's highest award, the Elliott Bell Award. Of course, Elliott Bell was the Financial Writers' first president. He was editor-in-chief of Business Week. He was also chairman of the executive committee at McGraw-Hill, which is the parent of Business Week, to show us how influential he was.
Right.
What was it like to receive Elliott Bell?
Oh, Greg, it was incredibly humbling. It was probably the biggest honor of my life, was to be given that award. And that dinner still stands out. I mean, there were so many previous Elliott Bell winners were actually there. Steve Shepard presented the award to me. We had I think it was the chairman of the SEC was a featured speaker. That dinner still stands out. And my son was there. It was, all my friends. I was deeply, deeply honored.
Remember Stephen Shepard, who was our boss at Business Week, and he also received the Elliott Bell Award.
Yes, he was one of
them. Just before you, and then Jack Deardorff did from Business Week. Got their fourth from Business Week, including you with your background.
Right. It's incredibly humbling to have gotten that award.
Look, let's talk about something a bit more fun. Of course, the annual Financial Follies in which you participated. That's from the journalists do comedy skits and songs about the financial world, both ribald, and not ribald. What's your most memorable Follies experience?
Oh my, Greg, there've been so many memorable Follies experiences. I think the best part of being in the Follies was being in the rehearsals. Those we would get together twice a week. I mean, it was so much fun. Seriously, a lot of fun. Lots of Cat's Deli dinners, but I suppose for anyone who was around back in the late 80s or early 90s, I am probably most remembered for the role I played as Marla Maples, singing to Donald Trump on top of a grand piano. That's probably. You
played Marla Maples? That didn't ruin your career by playing that role?
It should have, right? I mean, Donald did try to get me fired, but maybe not for that performance. But anyway, it's true. But I think my fondest memory as a participant in the Follies was the year I was president, the Follies of 1995. I think that was one of the best written. I had nothing to do with it, but the script was like one of the best scripts ever written. And but for me, the most fun was the finale. The finale of that show, where the whole cast got together and sang, and I got to dance with Richard Chang, and we sang, I know that song. It was a song from How to Succeed in Business. It goes, "We are the fellowship of man." Da, 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 da. Anyway, it was so much fun. For me, that's the most memorable.
That's good. You're still on K. I like that. You're very good. You haven't lost your touch at all.
We don't know about that.
I wanted to ask you, when you look over the past, a few decades, how is the association, the Financial Writers Association, different today than it was when you first joined several decades ago?
So how is the association different today than it was in 1983 when I joined? Well, I think technology has changed things. Hold on a second. Ralph, can you go away? My husband's making some noise here. Anyway, certainly technology has changed things immensely, thanks to things like video, like Zoom, video, Facebook. There's a lot more that's done online rather than in person. And I'm not sure that's such a great thing, but I mean, because I do miss that. I miss most, if not all, of the Follies now is done on video. Very few live performances. Are there any? I don't think there are.
No, they're not. No, it's all video now.
It's all video now. Annual meetings, we're in person, and we had many programs. We would have monthly newsmaker lunches. We'd get together at Gallagher's, and we'd have, some keynote speaker or some newsmaker of some sort. So at the spring dinners, that's when the Elliott Bells were given, along with a featured speaker. Those are gone. So, but I guess the most notable change are the Follies.
Yeah, and of course, the COVID, as we know, changed things. A lot of people work remote over the past few years. I was wondering, how do you feel the financial journalism profession has changed over the past few decades since you started? By the way, I remember joining Business Week in 1982 after being a daily journalist of the South. And we used to feed our articles, on a piece of paper into the computer, for them to be printed. But
the tickers?
Talk about the change in the people and the technology.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's both the velocity of technology and the volume of knowledge have changed things immensely. It's like you really have to be smart. You really have to be fast. I mean, I just saw a statistic that in 1945, it took 25 years for knowledge to double. These days, today, human knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. So how do you deal with that dizzying pace of, change? So that's the profession has changed because the world has changed.
It just occurred to me that let's go back to those young students who you're talking to, okay? You got to be wicked smart. You know what I mean?
Wicked smart.
Wicked fast, wicked smart.
Yeah.
And, but what are the other key challenges you feel that those young journalists face today that we didn't face?
I think the hostility, I still hear from people who say, why would you want to be a journalist? We get beat up. But again, I come back to, in this post-truth world, it's not the journalists who are fabricating things. It's, the world is a mess. Frankly, the world is a mess, and sorting through that, having that BS detection, being able to understand and figure out what's true and what's not true is I think much bigger challenge today than it's ever been. And like you said, you got to be wicked smart to figure that out.
You do. You're right. I mean, much better educated, much savvier. I wanted to ask you, you've had a long and illustrious career. When you look back at your career, you were a financial journalist with Business Week and other publications. You were in academia at Columbia. Is there anything you would have done differently?
Greg, I feel like I feel blessed. I lived through the golden age of journalism. I feel really lucky to have had that opportunity. And is there anything I would have changed personally? I don't think so. I think I just feel so blessed to have come into the profession when I did, and to meet all the wonderful people and the young students that I got. That for over 25 years, I had how many, like 250 students. It was just, I wish, if anything, I wish that I could have helped more.
Well, last thing I wanted to ask you, and you could admit this to our audience, but is there any Financial Follies song that you just lusted after singing that you were never able to sing, that somebody else got you weren't able to sing?
Not really. I feel like I got all the parts I could ever handle, and it was such a joy. I enjoyed every song I ever did, and especially dancing with Richard Chang. I mean, he's phenomenal. I don't know.
I got to go back and see Richard Chang again. You mentioned him several times.
You don't know Richard?
No, I do know. I know him.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Go back and watch that the finale of the 1995 show with any piece that he did is phenomenal. But that was so much fun. The whole cast was dancing with him. It was and singing. It was great. I really, I do. I miss that stuff, Greg. I miss the old days.